At 6:11 in the morning, a champagne-colored hypercar, a $1 million status symbol with doors like gull wings and a license plate that read CC&R, floated past my living room window sideways, gently bonking the mailbox before vanishing into a newly created river that used to be Cypress View Drive. The HOA president sprinted after it in foam flip-flops, shrieking in a panicked voice, "Somebody stop it," as if anyone could towel dry the Pacific Ocean. She was still wearing her silk pajamas, the expensive kind with monogrammed initials, now completely soaked and clinging to her like she had just lost a fight with a garden hose. On my porch, a lonely pyramid of sandbags she had ordered removed the night before sat like a tombstone for common sense. I stood there with my coffee, watching the chaos unfold, feeling a strange mix of vindication and disbelief. My name is Elias Trent. I'm a quiet guy. I roast my own coffee, fix my own gutters, and prefer conversations where both parties are trees. My cottage backs up to a marsh in a community called Cypress Viewpoint, in the town of Willow Bend Shores. It's beautiful if you like herons, less beautiful if you don't respect water. I've lived here for 8 years, long enough to know that when the river starts creeping up the banks, you don't wait for permission to protect your property. Our HOA Karen is Trisha Mallaloy, a woman who speaks in bullet points and believes the world can be cured with matching shutters and the right shade of mailbox paint. She drives that ridiculous hypercar, wears designer athleisure to check her mail, and treats HOA meetings like corporate board presentations complete with PowerPoint slides about mulch consistency. When the river climbed the banks last week after 3 days of heavy rain, I did what any reasonable person would do. I stacked sandbags along my driveway and garage. They were modest, neat, and effective. Tan-colored bags filled with clean sand, arranged in 2 rows that would divert water away from my foundation. Trisha took it as a personal affront to what she called neighborhood cohesion and aesthetic harmony. The notices started arriving almost immediately. The first one said "Unapproved Flood Aesthetic" in bold letters, delivered in a cream-colored envelope with the HOA logo embossed on it. The second complained that my sand color was non-compliant, claiming I had used beige instead of dune, as if there was a Pantone color chart for emergency flood protection. The third notice cited Section 12B of the Covenant Codes and Regulations, stating that temporary structures required board approval with a minimum 14-day review period. I had put up sandbags, not a guest house. Trisha patrolled the neighborhood in her clip-on visor and designer sunglasses, snapping photos with her phone and tooting about precedent. She posted my address in the HOA app with the caption "Hazard display, encourages hysteria," complete with 3 photos taken from different angles like she was documenting a crime scene. The app comments filled up with neighbors either defending me or parroting Trisha's talking points about property values and curb appeal. She even brought a tape measure one afternoon, kneeling in her white capri pants on my driveway, and declared my sandbags too tall for the visual easement, whatever that meant. I asked her to define visual easement. She said it was in the bylaws and walked away. When the weather forecast warned of a once-in-25-year storm system moving up the coast, I submitted a formal request for an emergency variance, citing the county's flood maps that showed my property in a high-risk zone. Trisha denied it in 9 minutes flat with a message that said Cypress Viewpoint is not a sandbag community. We are a cobblestone planter community. We pride ourselves on maintaining standards even during challenging weather events. Then she sent 2 teenage landscapers to assist with removal to maintain curb appeal, as she put it. They showed up in a pickup truck with the HOA Landscaping Company logo on the door. They yanked at the bags while she supervised with her arms crossed, nodding with satisfaction each time they tossed one into the truck bed. I watched from my window, filming on my phone, the way you watch a raccoon open a cooler that's also a bear trap. I knew this wasn't going to end well for someone, and I had a feeling it wasn't going to be me. One of the teens looked uncomfortable, glancing at the darkening sky, but Trisha kept directing them like a general commanding troops. When they finished, she inspected the area with her hands on her hips, smiled, and drove away in that stupid hypercar. That night, the county issued an emergency advisory at 7:30 p.m. The message was clear and urgent: protect low-lying homes, do not obstruct drainage, and leave existing barriers in place. Residents were advised to secure property and prepare for significant flooding. I printed out the advisory and taped it to my front door with packing tape, making sure it was visible to anyone who approached. Trisha responded within an hour by texting the board group chat that my sandbags were debris and were redirecting water onto common property, endangering the community. She included photos showing water pooling near the street, conveniently ignoring that it was raining and water pools everywhere when it rains. Then she called the non-emergency line at 9:15 p.m. and told the dispatcher, in a very authoritative tone, that she had authorization to abate a flood hazard situation. She did not have any such authorization. The dispatcher told her to wait for official guidance. She did not wait. My door camera caught her at 10:42 in the evening, wearing a rain jacket and gardening gloves, removing the last row of sandbags herself. She grunted with effort, dragging each bag to her SUV, and then stacking them in front of the HOA clubhouse to demonstrate approved placement, as she explained to someone on her phone. Her exact words were, "I'm showing these people how it should be done." 3 hours later, the sky opened like a broken aquarium and unleashed a deluge that meteorologists would later call historic. By dawn, the marsh had become a freeway for catfish. Water surged down Cypress View Drive, which, without my sandbags acting as a barrier, turned my street into a sluice box that channeled the flood straight down the hill. The water was moving fast, carrying lawn furniture, recycling bins, and an inflatable pool shaped like a flamingo. Public Works rolled in with lights flashing through the rain around 6 a.m. The county inspector, a woman with a clipboard and zero patience, stepped out of her truck wearing waders that went up to her chest. She asked in a stern voice who had interfered with residential flood mitigation contrary to the emergency advisory. Several neighbors pointed at Trisha's house. I calmly walked over and pressed play on my door camera footage on my phone. Trisha's face appeared on screen, framed by my porch light, cheerfully dismantling my barrier like a toddler with a Lego set, completely oblivious to the consequences of her actions. The inspector's eyebrows did a slow climb that could have reached the storm clouds. She replayed the video twice, taking notes. The sheriff's deputy, his poncho billowing in the wind, wrote faster than the rain was falling, his pen moving across the citation pad with purpose. And then came the car. Trisha's pride and joy, a custom pearl-white electric hypercar she called the investment. She talked about it constantly at HOA meetings, mentioning the custom paint job that cost more than most people's annual salary, the hand-stitched Italian leather interior, the carbon fiber accents, the 0 to 60 time that nobody cared about. She had shown everyone photos of the unveiling at the dealership, where she posed next to it with champagne. It had been parked on her paver-perfect driveway, nose toward the street, because garage floors scuffed the special wheels, she always said. She wanted people to see it, to admire it, to envy it. The flood had other plans. The water lifted it like a waiter raising a platter, the front end rising first, then the whole vehicle floating free from the pavers. It sent the car surfing down the hill in slow motion, spinning slightly as it gathered speed. Neighbors filmed on their phones as the gull-winged doors fluttered open and closed like a dying bird. The alarm sobbed into the storm with a sound that echoed off the houses, and the million-dollar jelly bean kissed every single trash can on its farewell tour down Cypress View Drive. It sideswiped a stop sign, clipped a mailbox that belonged to the Hendersons, bounced off a fire hydrant with a metallic crunch, and kept going. It wedged itself at the end of the block, hood first into the HOA monument sign that read "Welcome to Cypress Viewpoint, Harmony by Design." The impact was spectacular. The sign cracked right down the middle with a sound like a gunshot, the word harmony splitting perfectly in half. Chunks of decorative stone scattered across the intersection. When the water finally receded hours later, around noon, the car sat there like a very expensive koi fish gasping on gravel, water pouring out of every seal and crevice. The paint was scratched down to bare metal in places. One of the gull-wing doors hung at an odd angle. The front bumper was gone completely. The custom wheels were bent into shapes that would make an engineer cry. My cottage, bone dry. The single row of sandbags I had res-tacked at 3 in the morning, behind my fence on my property line with 2 neighbors as witnesses named Bill and Margaret, had kept my garage completely protected. Not a single drop of water made it past my foundation. My car sat safely in the garage, my tools were untouched, and my property had 0 damage. The difference between my place and everyone else's on the street was stark and obvious. The county fined Trisha for violating an emergency order, criminal trespassing, and tampering with approved flood protections. The total came to $12,000 in fines and penalties. The HOA's insurance company saw the door camera video, reviewed their policy, consulted with their legal team, and then refused to cover her car. They stated in their denial letter that the damage was foreseeable and self-induced due to the policyholder's own actions in direct violation of emergency protocols. The letter was 3 pages long and used phrases like willful negligence and reckless disregard. Her personal auto insurance also denied the claim for similar reasons, pointing out that she had created the conditions that led to the loss. The car was totaled. $1 million gone. The towing company charged her $800 just to extract it from the monument sign. The board held an emergency meeting 2 days later at the clubhouse, which still had water stains on the walls. They voted her out with a unanimous decision of 7-0. She wasn't even allowed to defend herself. They handed me a formal written apology on HOA letterhead, plus reimbursement for the ruined sandbags, delivery fees, and my time, totaling $940. A judge granted me a restraining order after I showed him the evidence, the violation notices, the video footage, and the timeline of harassment. She was ordered to stay at least 500 feet away from my property at all times. Then came the best part. The judge mandated that Trisha complete 60 hours of community service with the county's flood control department as a condition of avoiding additional jail time for the emergency order violation. Her first assignment was filling sandbags under the supervision of a man named Gus who called everyone champ and had been doing flood control work for 30 years. She would spend her weekends for the next 3 months shoveling sand into bags in the county maintenance yard, wearing an orange safety vest, learning exactly why sandbags matter. When the verdict was read in the courtroom, Trisha's face went from red to white to a shade of purple I didn't know existed on the human spectrum. Her lawyer tried to speak, but she cut him off. She stood there gripping the table in front of her, her knuckles turning white, mouth opening and closing like her car had done in the floodwater, unable to form words as the reality of 60 hours of manual labor in mud and rain sank in. The judge asked if she understood the terms. She nodded once, stiffly, and sat down hard in her chair like her legs had given out.